good evening and welcome. Welcome to After Hours 64, an almost live episode. Certainly live in terms of it's a YouTube premiere. Now, what's MacBites After Hours? If you've never been before, let me enlighten you. MacBites After Hours is like the MacBites podcast that it was born out of, but live and on video. Oh, what could go wrong? The MacBites podcast, what's that? Well, it's a podcast that takes an irreverent look at all things Apple. After Hours? Well, After Hours is video-based tips, tricks, demos, tutorials, unboxings, and sometimes culinary delights. Now, what have we got for you tonight? Well, absolutely loads. Hopefully, all that you will find interesting. Some things we've mentioned before have moved on, so we'll share the updates. And other things are completely new. Many of these have been requested by you. So hopefully there'll be something for everybody tonight. But before we move on any further, make sure you are watching in HD. Because this is a YouTube premiere, we can ramp up the quality. And we're running at 1080p tonight. So if you want to get the best quality, cog in the lower right-hand side of the video. Make sure you've got your HD flash on it and that you are at 1080. Now, first of all, an update to Notion. Now, if you've been with us before, you know we adore Notion. Surprisingly, there was an update to Notion last week. We were not expecting another update to Notion. However, we got one. Got to love this. Oh, hopefully it means we're closer to the timeline view. This update is not that. This update has focused heavily on improvements to the mobile app. Now, before we go any further, this was the photo that Notion put out. Basically, they've added a bar at the bottom. I was horrified. My first comment to Mike, suitably bleeped for public consumption, was, "What? You've taken so much room off me with that bar." I still think it could move down a smidgen, but it is actually quite useful. But my first reaction was, oh no, you don't. Anyway, let's head off and actually have a look at it. So this is Notion on iOS. All the changes and improvements that have been rolled out in here have been rolled out to iOS and Android. So if you are on Android, do let us know. How is it? Is it improved? The speed improvements of last week are there. But in addition to that is this new bar at the bottom that you can see. Right. Shall we go with the least impressive? That's quite tricky, actually. You're drawn automatically to the right in terms of capture. So if I tap on that button in the lower right-hand corner, you can see I've actually got there. It says restore page, delete permanently, I want to delete that permanently because that wasn't where I was at. Right, so let me add a page. That's interesting. Every time I add it, it goes back into a new page from iOS. Right, that's because I was testing it. I'm going to add this to my flight deck. Right, so that was because the page I had last added it to had actually been deleted. So I need to show you two things at this point. Tapping the button in the lower right gives you a new page. But where it will store that new page depends on what you have configured in the top where it says add to. And the reason that I had that error there was I had deleted the page it had last added to. But now I've told it to add it to the flight deck, all is well, because that page exists, and this is going to let me add a page inside that flight deck. Now, you may very well want to create an inbox. That might be a good idea. If we go back over here, I don't really have an inbox per se. I used to have, but I found it less than useful. Now might be the time to add back an inbox of some description. That might now make sense. But at this point, you can give your page a title. So the page title goes in there. There we go, page title. And you even get to choose whether you have an icon or an empty page. So those are the next two options that are just underneath that page title. All the page with icon will give you is a random icon. I can't think of many occasions you would want just a random icon. But who knows, you might. Now, if I carry on down, you also get the opportunity straight away from that add button to add a database in a table, a board, a list, or a calendar or gallery format. So you've got your 5 views of a database that you can create straight in here. Even more than that, you get the option to use one of the default templates, and if you recall, they are usually available from the bar on the left hand side, and there are groupings of them. So it starts with design, it goes through education, there's a lot on education, through engineering, human resources, marketing, personal, product management, sales, support. Unfortunately, what is not an option there is something of yours. So all the default templates are there, and blank databases and blank pages are there. So I'm going to say page with icon, just so you can see it. So it's an icon, appears like that. You can swap it, you can add a cover, you can add discussions, you can add more contents. So I'll put in some more content there. But at that point, you've added it. So if we go with the burger menu in the top left-hand corner, and we go to the flight deck, and we go all the way down the bottom, and there's lots on that page, if you remember, there is the page title right at the bottom. And if I tap on that, it shows me that page. Now, that might not seem that exciting. It might not. The interesting bit with it is as you tap it again, it remembers where it previously added items. So it's remembering the flight deck. So hence, having an inbox might be a really good idea, because it would enable you to add things as inbox items to be processed later. So I'll go for with an icon again and just put another item. So it's just a fast way to enter things. Up till now, what people were doing, instead of having a dedicated button, was they were making shortcuts to particular pages within Notion in iOS or Android, and it was all a bit messy. So this was just to speed that up. Now, point to think about, that is in addition to clipping an item. So if I head out of Notion and I go into, let's say, Firefox and find a page. Ooh, what page might we want to grab? Let's try, no, let's not try a BBC News page. All goes terribly wrong if I try that. Let's just go to the root of one of the websites that I look after. That will do nicely. And we'll try and get the home page. So Notion has a clipper, and the clipper does work incredibly well. So this is a very long page with graphics, tables, stories, headers, you name it, it's got it. Very, very, very long page. Right, and that's all the footer that's down there at the bottom. Right, let's say I want to capture that. Now I'm in Firefox, so I use the Share Page With option. But what we're interested in, what comes up at the bottom here, and I have Notion as I can't get rid of AirDrop, I can't move it. So Notion is the nearest one to me. I have configured that so it appears like that. Now, this is a clipper. This is nothing to do with a feature they've added. So what I'm showing it you for is if you want to take a quick note, then that's what you use the new feature for. But if you've got a website or something that you can send to Notion, then this is a better way to do it. Now you'll notice I said I didn't have an inbox. I don't have a generic inbox at the top of the pages stack, but I do have an inbox, and it's called Links Inbox. And the reason it's called Links is I call all the pages or databases that I capture things into, I start them with links. And that way, when I tap on it, they are all there. So you can see I've got Inbox, MacBites, PPD, CCS, Notion, Shopping. You can also add to a page though, and those are the top level pages listed at the bottom, including the flight deck. So I'm just going to choose Flight Deck. What I'm hoping is that it will add that page to the bottom of the Flight Deck page. Now, you can in here leave that alone, or you can edit it. So what I'm looking at here is just having it saying our parishes at the beginning. That would be good. And saving it. Right, you see how fast it saves? It is very, very quick when it comes to saving. So let's go into it. Let's go back to the Flight Deck, go all the way down to the bottom. As I said, there was acres of things in there. So zoom right down to the bottom. And there's the 3 items. So the first 2 with the icon were manual notes that I added from within Notion. But the third one, that's marvellous, isn't it? It's managed to capture the URL. I wanted the content of the page. Oh, here it comes. And there you go. It's not done bad there. It's pulled in the tables, it's pulled in the sections. I'm thinking it's having a think about the rest of it, but it's not done a bad job. So there's 2 different ways to capture now. If you're sending information from somewhere into Notion, use the clipper. If you want to manually add information into Notion, then use this button in the lower right-hand corner. Right, the next button is the bell in the middle. So when you tap that, you've got elements in here saying that's all. You've got what you followed, you've got your mentions, and you've got this page. And you can elect to follow this page if you want changes that are made to this page sent to you in the form of notifications. So I've done that on that point. Then we've got the search on the left-hand side. And that is the search that we've got very excited about on the desktop. On mobile, it's offering you the same things. You've got recent pages that you've accessed, which is quite correct. Recent searches that I've run, which is for this show, 0064. What else? What do we have? We had our parishes, didn't we? Let's see if we can pick up that page that we just added. And there it is, our parishes, and it takes you straight to it. So it's a fast way to access 3 specific features. First one is probably the most useful, which is pushing things into Notion from one place in Notion, not having to navigate to where you want it first and then manually adding a page, actually adding it and then putting it where you want it to be. And what I mean by that is as you tap it, you do get an option in the top to change where it goes from the same place. So as far as you're concerned, when you come to add an item, you tap the button in the lower right, it takes you to what you're looking at right now. But from here, you can choose where to add it. Now, that's called the Add To in the top left-hand corner. But sometimes you may want to move things. So let's go back to the Flight Deck. Let's go all the way down to the bottom of the Flight Deck, whiz past that lot. I've now got an untitled because we've actually added one. But if we've got our parishes there, if you want to move that, you'll go up here and you've got an option to move to. What they've done is that move to page is now identical to the add to page. So you only need to understand how one bit of it works for both halves of it to function for you. So I actually want to move that page and I'll move it to, where can I put it? Mine is so streamlined, there's nowhere to actually put rubbish. Can I just move it there? Oh, I've moved it to the deleted page, but it's fine, it's quite happy with that. So I've added it in there and told it to undelete it. So basically the add to option that you have in the top is exactly the same as the move to now. That's very powerful. I must admit, I read these release notes and thought, a little bit on the underwhelmed side. But actually, I was wrong. They are tweaks, but they're very useful tweaks. The other changes, there were some bug fixes. But basically, they were the main changes to it. What do you think? Let me know. Do you use it on mobile? The mobile apps do not have the best rep. I will be the first to admit they do not have the best rep. The thing that annoys me most with the mobile app is not actually on the iPhone. It's the fact that Apple push like crazy the fact that an iPad is a real computer, massive air quotes, and yet there's no way that I can force Notion to display itself like it would on a desktop with columns. Doesn't work like that. And I can't find a way around it. Everybody's moaning about that. That's the biggest problem. You take ages laying things out as you want them to be laid out, and you've got this 12.9-inch iPad, and everything's squashed up into a single column. If they could fix that, oh boy, would I be happy at that. But for on the phone, that's the reason I don't tend to use Notion that much on an iPad. This is why I have a MacBook Air. But on the phone, where it's narrower anyway, and it makes sense to squish it down, those features will make my life easier. Will they make your life easier? Let me know. Absolutely, let me know. Now let's head on to the next item. The Microsoft Office app. We talked about this a couple of months ago. In relation to one specific thing it enabled you to do. And it was out in beta, and I managed to get in it. And what it is Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and more, you'll notice, in a single application. Now, for this to work, you are still going to need Office 365, or a subscription there too. You'll see it says it's free, but it offers in-app purchases. The in-app purchases of which it speaks is a subscription to Office 365. The difference between this and the individual applications is that it's a single download. The other issue with it is, instead of, if you think of how you probably use Word, how you probably use Excel, you open it up and you're faced with a blank file, and you either use that blank file to create your new spreadsheet or your new Word document, or you go to File Open and you go and find the document that you want to open. And what they've attempted to do with this is give you a bit of a jump-off point as you go into it, instead of a blank page. So they've tried to second guess what it is you want to do. We were talking about it in relation to the fact that at the time, this is a couple of months back, there was no way to have multiple copies of Excel running, for example. Mike was a little bit upset about that. I must admit, there's one job that Mike and I were doing, and I needed to have two spreadsheets side by side. And we've done this job for 3-4 years. Only every couple of months, but when we needed to do this job, there was no way around it. So I said to Mike, well, look, what I'm going to do is I've got the main spreadsheet built in Excel, and that's fine. As soon as we had split screen on the iPad, I said, if I can't split screen Excel, which I couldn't do, I will put numbers next to it, and I'll build the second half of the spreadsheet in numbers. And we've been using that for over a year. This kind of took away the need for that, because you could have Microsoft Office, the all-in-one app, on one side and Excel on the other. So let's have a look what they've done with it. Having said that, that was all very well, but it's not optimised for iPad. I don't know what they're thinking. I did have a look round. I could not find one that was optimised for iPad, so it ran kind of 2 times, which wasn't that impressive. But on the phone, let's have a look at it. Right, I am going to go into the App Store, and we're going to find it, because that was my first problem. I knew what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. So let's have a look in here and put in Office 365. Simple, I thought. It'll come up top, I thought. No, it didn't. So we've got Outlook. We've got Get Productive with Office 365, but that's a story. It's not actually anything that you can tap and install. So I just zoomed past that and kept going. And going, and going, and going, until I gave up. All these things, 99% of them are from Microsoft. But no, once I started getting Google stuff, I thought, no, that's not working. But I did notice in that story, this one, Get Productive with Office 365, that icon. Now, that icon is the app icon, which is important. It's the new version of the Office icon. So there's been a whole development of the Office icon over the years. That's the latest iteration, and that's what made me think, okay, if it's not mentioned anywhere else, maybe it's in there. So I tapped to get into there, and indeed there was this long story. And as you can see, as you go down, it gives you what you'll find in the iOS App Store in terms of apps. So there is this Word, Excel, PowerPoint and more one at the top, which is the one that we're talking about. And then you've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote and OneDrive. I never thought I'd see the day I'd have all that installed from Microsoft, but that just shows you how far they've moved on. So it's a fairly short thing for a story, but that was the only place I could find to install it. The other option I found was to go to one that did come up that you knew was from Microsoft, like Word, scoot down to the bottom, and it does say More by Microsoft, at which point you can drag them across. So I'm flicking across to the left. Ooh, Edge. Need to get that sorted. Haven't sorted that yet. And see if it comes up there. And it's the very last one. So I don't know why it's not featuring highly in the search at the moment. I'm going to go back to the story and get it from there. So I'm going to tap there to download it. Hopefully, it won't take too long. If it does, I shall have to speed this up in post. It's not going that fast. Oh dear. While it's doing that, why don't you tell me, do you use Office? Do you have a subscription? I actually renewed my subscription yesterday. It's due actually yes, Friday, Thursday, let me think. Thursday it was due. So I actually renewed it the day before it was due. I know, on the death. I'd had the box in with the key in since November. I bought it in the Black Friday sale, if you remember, and that was a good way to save £30. So my Office subscription for the entire year cost me £46, which wasn't at all bad. It does include the 1 terabyte of OneDrive space. So you can't really say fairer than that when you look at the price of storage elsewhere. Oh, and it's got a spurt on with itself now. It's really going. Obviously, this one's going to take longer to download than all of the others because it's got all of the others inside it. Now, it says and others. Did it actually tell you which ones are in there? No, it doesn't. Oh, it'll be a surprise when we open it then, won't it? Right, let's tap to open. And there is the splash screen. You can see they are really excited about it, that it's reimagined. But what it's telling you is that all your documents, notes, etc., but even more than that, your ability to scan and to take photographs of whiteboards and get that in here and sign PDFs is all together in one application, which is the way Microsoft are going. Very, very much so. So get started. So I will get started. So don't miss anything when somebody shares with you or collaborates with you. I'll turn that on. And I'll say allow. And there's the files that I've got. So instead of being faced with an application, you're not. You're faced with a list of files in the order that you last used them. And that looks reasonable. But at the same time, across the bottom, there is a big plus button. So if you wanted to create a new file, you could do that. This, where we are now, is the home view. But you also have on the right-hand side at the bottom, actions. So let's tap on the actions. This is really where they want you to be. And the rationale for that is it's task-based. Now, this week, Microsoft have also, I won't say released because they haven't, somebody managed to find a backdoor into something that's in very, very early beta. And it's called Outlook Spaces. Now, we'll probably take a look at it next week, but it's unlike anything you've ever seen before from Microsoft, and it's using a framework that they've created, and it looks very similar to this. So this is the future as far as Microsoft are concerned. The top option lets you transfer files. Then you've got image to text. So if you want to extract some text from a photo, you can do that. Mike demonstrated a good few months ago the ability that Excel has to convert an image into a table. And that's exactly what you've got here, image to table. Then the next 4 options are all to do with PDF. You can sign a PDF, add a signature to a PDF, scan to a PDF. pictures to you name it, you can do it with a PDF. I haven't tried any of those yet. I was far more interested in the actual app itself and getting into that. So we've seen home, we've seen actions. I'm going to tap that plus button and see what you get. Now, instead of offering you Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's actually offering you documents, which incorporates all of them, but also the ability to create a note and to create a new item from the camera. So there was an application called Office Lens, and the idea of that was that you could take it, basically it was a scanning app. So you could scan a piece of paper and it would turn it into a document. Or you could take a photo of a whiteboard and it would turn it into a usable image. In fact, I think it converted it to a vector and enabled you to manipulate it in PowerPoint. Office Lens is built in completely into this. I'm thinking I'm going to need a piece of paper or something to demonstrate it, aren't I? Which is going to be interesting, seeing as though it's pretty dark at the moment. But I've got a magazine, so I'll try it on a magazine. We'll see if that does any good at all. Right, I'll get that on the table and we'll try it. We'll also try the notes option, but let's try Office Lens first. So I'm extricating my phone and I'm going into Office Lens. So it needs permission to use the camera, so we'll say yes. You'll see at the bottom, so that's my magazine cover, if I can get that high enough without it hitting the microphone. Oh, the joys of doing this. Right, there we are, nearly on the table. Right, I've got it just about there. But before I do that, I'm going to take it down so I can actually see it. You've got a document. You have a photo or you have a whiteboard. The option that you choose there is going to determine what the post-processing looks like. So if I say this is a document, although it's actually more of a photo, but we'll say a document, and I have tapped it, and it goes into process mode. And what it tries to do, as you can see, is crop it down. And it's done a pretty good job. The colours are pretty decent. But there's a little bit missing in the top left-hand corner. So just something to think about there. You've also got filters at the bottom. So if you wanted it to be black and white, save a bit of space, or grayscale, or no processing on it, or a little bit of processing on it. So auto, I think, does work very well. Those are the filters, and then you've got the modes. And the modes are the document, the photo, and the whiteboard. Now, it's not a whiteboard, but that's probably what it would do with a whiteboard. So let's get it back to being a document. And that looks pretty decent. Now, if you want to change the crop, you can do. I tap the button at the top, and what I'm going to do is move this corner here. Now, the only problem you've got with trying to move that corner, and it's something that I find with so many applications like this, when I get my finger over the top of that and I want to move it, I can't see it. That's why I use Scanner Pro from Riedel. It's the only one that zooms in and lets me see it. So now I've got a little bit, if I go in here, I've got a little bit of the desk showing, but I do have all of the text. But it's done a reasonable job, hasn't it? So I'll say done. You would like to save it to your photo, so I'll say yes and put it in there. And it's now stored in here as media. So that was when I tapped that button and said Lens. Right, notes is another one. And this actually looks like a post-it note. So a quick note. There we go. A quick note. And done. And push that down to the bottom. And it's added it as a note. Hopefully you'll be able to see from this what Microsoft are up to. They're giving you a completely different look, a completely different ideology, really, for interacting with your Office documents. This is more like your desk would be. If I'd taken a quick note, and trust me, my desk is always full of post-it notes. Oh, you can do so much with a packet of post-it notes and a pen. You would have that note on your desk, and if you'd got your magazine, that would be on the desk. So this is a completely different way of working. Now, the third option was documents. So tap on documents. This time it takes you through and you've got your core Office products, Word, Excel and PowerPoint. And in there, within the three applications, there's three different ways of starting a document. So the Word one is to scan text, the Excel one is to scan a table, and the PowerPoint one is to choose a picture or pictures. Then the next column, you've got a blank document, a blank workbook, or a blank presentation. And the third column is to create from a template. We'll go for a template and see what it does. Now, it gives you all of the template options that you have available on the desktop. Don't see a way to force it to load more. Sometimes on the desktop, there's a search option. And you can search for maybe a calendar or something very specific. But this seems to be a limited number of those. So what have we got here? Recipes. No, I should probably leave the kitchen alone. Let's go for that one there, that flyer. And it actually opens it up in an edit mode for you that you can zoom down to. So I've zoomed down there, and you can then start changing the placeholder text. You can put in tables, rows in tables, columns in tables, all kinds of stuff. So let's go back, and that should... Maybe I needed to manually save that. Let's go again on that. Let's choose PowerPoint this time. Make a bit of a presentation. Oh dear me, these are bad. Oh, my presentations are all so plain by comparison. Let's go for that one there. And let's add a title. Now, I think that should be saved. I don't think I should have to save that. I'm not seeing a big flashing save me button anywhere. Oh, she said as it popped up. Right, maybe you do have to save it then. The normal applications, you don't. It would just save it. We'll call it there. We'll put it in personal. That'll do. We should probably put it in inbox, but I'll leave it there in the root of it. And when we go back, it should have... There we go. The little indication that you've actually saved that there. So how does it compare to the others? I think if you know what you're doing, I think we're all conditioned to, I want to make a presentation, I'm going to go into PowerPoint. Yeah, I want to make a spreadsheet, I'm going to go into Excel. Maybe millennials will really take to this. It's going to take them taking away my other applications probably to get me to go for this. I'm wondering what Mike's thinking. I need to ask him because I'm recording this that late. He's in bed. But what do you think? You let me know what you think. Does it make more sense to you to have a kind of home portal like this where you can leave a note to yourself and you can see all the notes you've left to yourself or all the media and search for files by scrolling up and down here in terms of when they were created? Does that make sense to you? Or would you rather head off to the application and work within the application? My take on it is this is going to be the future. You're not probably in the future going to have a choice. The only choice would be that you would tap plus and then tap documents and then choose the document type you want by choosing a blank one in the middle. So it's actually a good few steps to get to that point. The other thing that's probably on your mind is what's going to happen to the applications we already have as standalone applications. And Microsoft have not said anything about that. So your guess is as good as mine. Oh, isn't it an exciting time? I wouldn't mind if it was fully functional and ready to take over, but I always worry when companies bring out applications like this that they're not really as good as the other ones. It's just new and shiny. And then people get giddy with it and say, oh, I like that feature and I like that feature. And the fact that 20, 30, 40% of the features that I particularly use aren't there doesn't particularly bother them. There is the 80-20 rule, isn't there? 80% of users only use 20% of the features. And my argument about that is, yes, but not the same 20%. So you can't afford to lose 30 in the hope we won't notice. But they keep doing it. Apple are masters of doing that. So that was the new app. It's available right now. As I've said, it's completely free of charge as long as you've got your Office 365 subscription. So download it, give it a go, and let me know what you think. While we head off into the next application. Now, the next application is probably one you've never heard of. But I'll bet when I've finished, you'll think that'd be quite handy because that's how I stumbled across it. It is an application for iOS. Now, when I say iOS, it's actually iPhone only. I have tried it on an iPad. It does not want to play ball, unfortunately, 2 times or otherwise. It just doesn't work. And that's because of what it actually does. Now, first of all, it's free. It does say offers in-app purchases. I will explain what the in-app purchase does. It does one thing. It gets rid of a watermark. But the watermark is right at the bottom of the image. So if you didn't want to pay, you wouldn't be actually losing that much if you didn't bother. I did pay for it because I gave it a good long trial for quite a long time and decided it did exactly what I wanted. So for me, it was a little bit quicker. What I was doing was taking the finished image into something else and cropping the bottom off. And I just thought, you know what, it's time to buy it. So what it does is, as you can see from there, it stitches screenshots together. Now, if you're like me, I take hundreds of iOS screen caps. If I order something from Amazon, and you know me, that happens quite a lot, I want a screenshot of the bit that says, "We'll be with you tomorrow." Because when it's not, I want a month of Prime free. This is why I don't pay for Prime. I always get a month free every time there's a foul up. So I take the screenshots, and on the odd occasion that I buy something via iOS, so not on my desktop, where I can do a scrolling capture, I have to piece together the screenshots that I take to make one long screenshot. And that is what Tailor does. It does it for you. The other thing that I use it for, as well as when I've bought something, is if there's a long thread on Facebook or something that you want to capture, or some tweets. But by far the thing I'm going to do the most is when I'm in the App Store, there's some stories. Now, we saw a very short story about Office. Sometimes the stories are very useful, but they're actually quite long. Let's go in and have a look. So if I go into the App Store, there's the story about Office. Now, that's actually only 2 captures. So let's try and find a longer one. I did find one. No, it wasn't about gaming. Oh, good grief, no, don't let me loose with gaming. It was one about productivity. Was it working anywhere? No, that one's very short as well. Probably because I looked at this yesterday. They've changed all the stories. And that's not going to happen either. Early to bed, early to rise, no chance. But it's a longer story, so it'll do nicely, that. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some screenshots. So starting with the top one, which is all of it, and then moving that up, but leaving a very healthy overlap. So that entire paragraph was there. I'll take it up to where it's talking about Asana. And I'll take it there so it's got pretty much a paragraph to do. Then I'll take it up to Real Eye Openers, take another screenshot, and that's actually the end. So the screenshots are down the bottom. They're getting saved off to the camera roll as we look at it. I'm going to go to the camera roll, which is elsewhere. There's my camera roll. And hopefully, in the midst of this, my stories will come in. Are they all there? I'm sure I took more than 5. But this is what you get. So there's my first one, and there's the second, and there's a huge overlap. But of course, to try and do anything with those individually would take some time. So this is what Tailor is for. It goes through your images and it works from the last image you took. And it's as fast as that. It stitched them together. It's found the overlap between them and created a completely seamless, long image. Now, what I tend to do with that image then is share it and save it. So I do a save image. But you could just as easily send it somewhere, like Notion. So add to flight deck. We'll put that with saved screen cap. Screenshot, that'll do. So you can do that with it as well. Right, let's go back in to the App Store. See if we can find another one. The one I had was red. Oh no, I don't want dating apps. Good grief, got enough trouble. Was it video? No, I'm sure it's about productivity. But you see, they're just list of apps. Some of these are incredible stories. No, we don't do so. Oh, awesome pics. I'm interested. No, not a wedding thing. They just seem to be long lists. The one I looked at was an actual story. And it's totally disappeared. I wonder if you can find stories. What if I put productivity? Let's do a search. Productivity. Productivity in stories. Ha ha! Supercharge your productivity. That sounds decent. Is that a long one? Oh, yes. And it would be quite tricky to capture yourself. So let's take that one. So same procedure again. Go to the top. Screen cap the first one. Move it down. You don't need to worry about the fact there is a screenshot at the bottom that's not saved yet. You can just keep taking screenshots. That won't do any harm at all. And move that up. Keep going. Oh, this one is probably going to be much longer than the last one, which is good. Let's see how it does with this one then. And that's the bottom of the story. So while they're saving off, come out of there, into there. It pops up the images and it joins them, including, hopefully, that brightly coloured one. There we go. Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, as I say, the difference between having purchased the in-app purchase and not is the fact that at the bottom, underneath where we've got that dark line, I'm bouncing it there would be a little watermark that says made with Tailor. But it's so good, never having failed me one. I've never had one that looks really terrible. Because it was so good, I decided, let's do a save image, that I would pay for it. So I went into here. In the settings, there was an option for an in-app purchase. It was $2.99. I tapped the button. It did its magic, came back, said I'd got it. Make sure you come out of the app completely. So swipe up and actually close it and then go back into it. It did work without doing that. I didn't have the watermark, but when I tapped on the settings, I still had the option to give them a $2.99. But when I rebooted the thing, I didn't need to. So close the app down completely and that disappears. I think that is amazing. I actually used that when we had another YTP, YouTube Premiere, and I was out and somebody asked something on Slack and I took some screenshots and used Tailor to stitch them together and then sent it to Slack. So it works fantastically. Happy to recommend that one. All right, what have we got coming up next then? It's freebie time. Got a good one for you this week. A very good one. This week, Photoshop is 30 years old. Scarily, I remember its birth. Obviously, I was a mere child. But Envato, that is Tuts Plus at Envato, have got a freebie this week to mark the occasion, which is a course. The entire course is free. Double exposure in Photoshop. I'm trying to remember how long it was. What I should do is go and get it and show you, isn't it? All right, let's do that. Right, where's Firefox? And where's the course? What was it called? What did I just say it was called? Double exposure. That's right. Double exposure. I know you're not seeing anything. You will be in a minute. There it is. There it is. Right, let me grab that on. Now you will notice with this, I am not logged in. It says sign in. I have an account, but I'm not logged in. And down here, we've got 6 lessons, 38 minutes. There we go. But you can play them all. So you do not need to be logged in to actually get this. You do not even need an account. It is completely free of charge. So I will make sure the link for that is underneath the video. And that's this week's freebie. Excellent. Let's head back in. Oh, it's Mike and his combo charts. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, today I'm going to be looking at something called a combo chart in Excel, or a combination chart. Looking at this data, yes, I know it's from 2015, but could be from any year. It shows you how long ago I actually created this demo. But looking at this data, what I've got is a list of months and a target and an actual. It happens to be for trainers' feedback from a training courses, but it could be any kind of target against actual. It could be sales, could be anything. But we've got a constant target throughout the year, although that could be different each month. And then we've got the actual. And there's a number of ways that we could present that data. The first way that comes to mind for most people is probably a standard column chart, and you just present it as 2 columns per month. But as you can see there, if you change the colours, it might be a little bit different. But really, if you look at that, I think it's quite difficult to get an overall view, an overall trend of the year. You'd be focusing on each month, and you'd be saying, yes, in January the target was the same as the actual. The February the actual was more than the target. You'd obviously need a key or a legend to show that the red column was target and the blue column was actual. I've missed that key off there, but that, I guess, would make it easier. But you're still looking at each month, and it's difficult to see the pattern across the year. Whereas with a combo chart, you can see now straight away that we've got the target as being the 90%, and that's constant across the year, and the actual is the columns. If I was to change one of the targets, for example, change March to 80%, that's immediately reflected in the chart, and you can see the dip there. But the key thing there is that it gives you that trend, that view across the year, and it's much easier to view the whole thing. So how do we actually create a combo chart? Well, like any chart, start by selecting all the data that you want to include. So in this case, I'm highlighting the cells with the months in because I want to include those on the chart as headings. Highlight target and actual because those can be used as the legends. And then, of course, highlight the 2 sets of numbers. Once I've done that, click on Insert, and we actually have a combo chart type. This one here. You've got 3 predefined ones, so you could use those. But in this case, I'm going to create a custom combo chart. And this lets me define the settings myself. In this example, it's tried to guess what I want, but I don't actually want those settings. So I'm going to change the target to be the line. And I'm going to change the actual to be the column. You notice that you don't have to have line and column. You can have various different options. So you do have a choice as to which ones you go for. Although what you're trying to do is choose something that makes viewing the data and understanding the data simple. So let's do that and click on OK. And there is my chart. Let's move the chart and resize it. And what I'll also do is change the colors. So I'm going to have the columns, I'm going to have those in blue. So I'll select one of the columns and they all get selected. We've talked about that before. And then go up to Format, Shape Fill, and choose a color. And then for the line, select the line. And what you're actually doing is selecting all the data points on that line. Now, lines don't have a fill. So with a line, I go to Shape Outline, not Shape Fill, and choose the color I want. On the demo, the other one here, you notice that it was a different thickness and it was dotted. To do that, go back to Shape Outline and choose Weight. Choose the thickness you want. And go back to Shape Outline and choose Dashes. And choose the style that you want. There we go. So there is our chart. I'd probably choose a chart title, set a chart title, and I can do it exactly the same as I've showed you in previous weeks. I can either overtype what's in there or select the chart title placeholder, type an equal sign into the formula bar and select a cell. I could spend time tidying it up in the same way I've tidied up all the other charts over the past few weeks, but hopefully if you've been with us the last 2 or 3 weeks, you've got the hang of all the different things that you can do with charts from a sort of tidying up point of view, and it would just be a repetition. Things like deleting the grid lines and changing the background colour and so on and so on. So I think we'll leave that one there. But there is another use for a combo chart. I'm going to give you a second example. So what I have here is I have a list of dates, the number of minutes that a particular employee was online looking at, should we say, non-work related websites, and the number of units of whatever our company makes were produced. And looking at those numbers, the longer that the person was online, the fewer units were produced. So we want to call this person into a disciplinary meeting and say, look, you shouldn't be using the internet too often because it's having a negative effect on production. But we need to present the data in an easy to understand way for everybody. And looking at a table of numbers like that is not easy. So I'm going to produce a chart from that data. Select all the data like I did before. The headings will have the dates as headings and the numbers. Then go to Insert and choose the combo chart. And again, I'll do a custom combo chart. This time, what I want to do is set the minutes online to be the line chart. So I've got the minutes online here, and that is currently being displayed along the axis here as the clustered column. Now, because I've got 2 different sets of numbers which vary wildly, I've got some really small numbers in column B and some really large numbers in column C, the chart doesn't look right in terms of what we want it to display. And so I actually want to change the minutes online not to be the clustered column, but to be the line chart like that. I want the units produced to be the clustered column. So let's just change that. That's what we want of sorts. But the chart really doesn't explain what we're trying to show because the numbers vary so differently. So when you have 2 sets of numbers, what you can do is you can create what they call a secondary axis, a secondary vertical axis. And to do that, you just put a tick in the box where it says secondary axis. Doesn't actually matter which one I go for here, whether I go for minutes online or units produced. So I'll tick minutes online, and you can see now the effect of the chart. Change it to units produced. It's the same chart. We've just got the larger numbers on the right hand side there and the larger numbers on the left hand side there, but it's the same chart. And so once I'm happy with that, I'll click OK. But that's what we're trying to show. We're trying to show that as the minutes online has increased, production has dropped. And I think that shows that off very well. one other thing to notice is there is a gap where we don't have any data, but it's still showing the dates. If you look at the actual dates in column A, we don't have an 11th and 12th of June because they were a weekend, but we do have the 11th and 12th of June on the chart, and that's because Excel is trying to second guess what we want, and it's treating those as dates, which they are because they're dates in the spreadsheet. And although the 11th and 12th don't appear, it's being too clever for itself, I guess, and showing them on the chart axes. It's not a fault, it's just the way Excel works. But if I select that axis, I can right click on it and go to Format Axes. And from there I have an axis type, and it defaults to automatically select based on the data. And I'll change it, instead of being automatically select based on the data or date axis, which is this case exactly the same, I'm going to change it to text axis. And if you change it to text axis, what it does, apart from the fact it changes it from being slanted to horizontal, because now there aren't as many dates and that way they can all fit in nicely, it's now treating those items as text and therefore only showing you exactly what is in column A. Now on Excel for the Mac, it is a little bit different to create a combo chart, and it's also less intuitive. So I'll start by selecting the data that I want to use, as I did in the last example. Then click on Insert, and there is a chart type of combo. There's 3 predefined ones. What there isn't is there isn't a custom combo chart. So I'll select this first one, which is the closest one to which I want. There's my chart. Let's just move it and resize it. But what I want is I want the line to be the target and the column to be the actual, like I did on the other version. To do that, if I click on the line and then go up to change chart type, this makes it sound like it's going to change the whole chart type. So it's going to make it a column chart or a line chart or a pie chart, but actually it's only going to affect that one element. So I'll change the actual from being a line to being a column, and I will change the target from being the column to being the line. So there we have it, 2 or 3 examples of a combo chart, a combination of a line and a column. So thank you for watching. I hope you found that useful, and I will pass back to Elaine.
And now we're moving on to the love affair between Notion and Evernote. You might be wondering. We first mentioned Notion on the show over a year ago, and at that time, Notion was being touted around in the press, publicity articles as being the new Evernote, a great alternative to Evernote. Now, I can't say I ever subscribed to that view greatly, but what I've been asked about is, and if you're wondering why I don't subscribe to that, Evernote is great for notes, but Notion is so much more than that. But if you are transitioning from Evernote to Notion, or you've got any degree of notes in Evernote and you want to take them to Notion, how can you do that, and how good is it in terms of what you get when you've done it? So the good news is Notion can import directly from Evernote. And before you ask, no, you cannot go the other way. Not easily, you can't. You can export from Notion in PDF format or CSV. So it works great in a spreadsheet. Evernote, not quite so happy with it. But this time we're looking at taking stuff from Evernote and going to Notion with it. So let's go and have a look at that. Well, first thing to see, Evernote. Let's go and have a look at Evernote. Now, I've been using Evernote for a long time. You can see there, I've got 10,549 notes. I have zero intention of taking all of these into Notion, ever. They are never, ever all going to go into Notion. Because I'm still actively clipping to it, to be honest with you. I find that Evernote is fantastic in terms of being able to clip a web page and it have very good fidelity. Now, Notion's also pretty good when it comes to clipping, but I've got to think about where I'm putting them. So I've started using Evernote as a kind of read me later service, and it works great for that. But what we're looking at here is one of the notebooks that I have in the archive. And one of the notebooks that I have in the archive is a course. In fact, the 3 notebooks I've got in the archive are all to do with course creation. One is admin of course creation. The other 2 are actually courses. It might not look like it, GAIP, that's Getting Advanced in Pixelmator. And ITP was Introduction to Pixelmator. And I did actually run my course creation through Evernote at the time. Not solely Evernote, but Evernote had the advantage that I could stick stuff in it, and when I went from my office, where I prepped stuff, to my studio to record it, obviously the 2 were in sync, and that saved me a ton of time. So what we're looking at here is actually the files that I had to create this course from. So starting with part 1, I tended to have it colour-coded. So anything that's that kind of petrol cyan colour was me just talking. Then I've got other notes. This one is for the second video. And this had images in it and instructions in it and things that I definitely had to say. You'll notice in here I've got markdown. I've got hashtags there. I've also got highlighting in slightly different colours. Must have been an Evernote update. So what I'm pointing this out for is so we can see when it gets into Notion, what degree of fidelity have you got with the original as it looked in Evernote. So let's take a look at another one. That one was easier. Now, the green indicates it's an intro and an outro. So I have quite a bit of colour coding. The red is moving on from talking about, basically, the red. So I'm talking about the colour source image, then I'm going to go on and talk about textured brushes. I didn't have a separate colour for commands. Commands are all the way through this. But pointing out, really, this wasn't overly processed in here. There was just enough information in here, to be honest, to actually get the job done. But what will we get when we get it into Evernote is the question. So quick look through some of those. Now, some of the ones I do, once I've got through all of the videos, so they're sort of in order, but they're actually in date order. But when we get to the top here, there's some redos. Redos are where I actually need to re-record something. So I must have made a mistake, something to do with that red bit there. That was what I needed to redo. This audio clip here is the audio clip which has all of that text spoken in it. And the idea is that I listen to it at the point of the re-record and I'll re-record the entire line, but the bit that I really need is the red bit. And the reason that I do a little bit before and a little bit after is so I go into the red bit with the right tone of voice. Point being, these have got audio in them. Will the audio go into Notion? So I've picked something that's quite tricky in a way. Now, how do you go about it? Well, we're in Evernote at the moment. That's not the best place to start. If you are concerned about your Evernote and you would like to back Evernote up, you can export from Evernote. And if you had an Evernote export, you could even import it into other applications such as OneNote. But that isn't how it works with Notion. So I'm going to minimize Evernote and bring Notion up. Now, this is my Notion at the moment. You know it radically changes every 2 minutes, but at the moment it's fairly straightforward. I just fold up that workspace. I've got my 3 favourites and I've got my private area which always has those folders in it, and that's that. Now, there's a few ways to import. There is an import button at the bottom. There's also in the top right-hand corner another import option. They both do exactly the same thing. When you click on that, you get these options to import from. So obviously Evernote is the first one there. But you've also got Trello and Asana. So if you've ever used Trello or Asana, you can bring in your information from there, as well as text, Markdown, CSV, HTML, Word, Google Docs, Dropbox Paper, Quip and Workflowy. So you've got lots of options for bringing data in. Is it a good idea to bring data in? I didn't. I mean, I'll bring this in as a demonstration. I may even keep it, but I wouldn't use it as is. I know what I'm going to get is going to be all right. It's going to be adequate. But in terms of it being perfect, in terms of what Notion could do if I'd built it from scratch in Notion, no, I'm not going to get that without some more work. Definitely not. But let's see how it all works. So you choose the import format. So this is the format it's coming from. So say Evernote. Now, despite the fact that I've already done this once with the other course, it's still prompting me to authorize Notion to be able to access my Evernote account. So I'll go and do that. Now, when you put your credentials in, it offers you this information, which is you've already authorised Notion to access your account until. Do you want to reauthorize? Now, you only will see that if you have already authorised it, which I did. But I'm going to reauthorize it for a year. There's no other way around that. So reauthorize. It has a think about it, and with a bit of luck, it will authenticate. It's going to be a terrible demo if it doesn't. Excellent. Right, now, it's got a tick in the box for course ITP, which was the introduction to Pixelmator. That's what I imported last time. But I'm going to take the tick out of that, and I'm going to put the tick in getting advanced in Pixelmator, because that's what I'm importing this time. Interestingly, it brings the notebooks in the order of the top level folders, but backwards. So hence I've got 4 at the top, followed by 3, which is resources. And then within each of those are the individual notebooks. So archive and resources are a notebook stack, and these individual titles here are the actual notebooks. So I'm bringing in all the contents of a notebook, which is course:GAIP. Now, before I got this far in rehearsals, I was wondering what degree of granularity I could give it. Could I get specific and say, bring in everything? Could I say, bring in just specific notes? And the answer to that was no. You bring it in by notebook. So if you want to import a range of notes, which in your mind may be a random range of notes, you can do that, but you would need to put them in a notebook first. Luckily, my course is already in a notebook, and I'm going to import that one. And then just click import. So it says importing one note from Evernote. There weren't actually that many notes in it, you saw that, but it's bringing them in. So 41 notes it's importing. Now, as it's doing it, you can see where it's doing it, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. We now have a page at the very top level in the private area called course:GAIP. And what you have in that page is a database that's showing in list view. So you might be thinking that doesn't look like a database. It's a database, but it's showing in list view. Now, it's built 2 views for me. It's built the list view and the gallery view. So let's go and have a look at the gallery view. Not exactly exciting, but that's because we're actually previewing the notes themselves. We could have images for that if we wanted to, but those are the 2 views it builds for you. So let's just go back to the list view, because from this view, I can show you what it has brought in successfully. And it's brought it in exactly the same order it was displaying in, I do believe. It's got the original creation date in there, which is spot on right. I recall it, even though it's nearly 6 years ago. So it's got the original creation date in, it's got the title. It's also got the tags. So it was an Envato course. My redos are tagged as redo. I've got checklists and I've got recording notes. and all of the tags have come in. So actually, in terms of an import, it's not at all bad. I can see me keeping hold of this to refer to this course if need be, rather than Evernote. But that's going to depend really, isn't it? Are all those audio files there? And what did it make of the text? Well, let's go and have a look. We definitely had a look at number 2, and it had a graphic in it, and the graphic is there. So no problem with that. But going through it, I can see straight away I've got no colour coding at all. It might actually be worse than that. I do have a bold where it was bold, but as I'm going through, I know that that paragraph at the bottom there is the outro, and the outro should be green. So what I was saying was, this is usable for an import, but you're going to have to actually go through it and triage everything. You're going to have to go through it and do things like that if those colours were incredibly important. Now, before you head off and do that, you might want to think about that and think, is it worth it? It's old information I'm bringing in. If I were redoing the course, I'd probably redo the whole thing anyway. It depends on what time you want to spend doing it. It's perfectly adequate to run searches on, but you will lose certain information, and the information so far that I've lost is the colour on that. But that wasn't one of the redos, was it? But we did have a redo. There's a redo. Now, it's come in, and let me point out what it has managed to bring in. It's got the text, but again, that bit was in red. So if you wanted that bit to be in red, you're going to have to go and format it yourself manually. It can be done. Sadly, it doesn't happen on the import. The audio file is actually there, and it plays. I have tested that. It does actually play. Needs to download it first, I do believe. But it will play, she said. No, it did. Honestly, it did in rehearsals. Now, the other thing while it's thinking about it, and that it's got in here, is it says index GAIP. What is that? Well, in the original Evernote, so let's go back to Evernote and have a look at redo number 2. At the top, it was that. That's what it's brought in. And what that actually is an index. When I click on it, it takes me to the index for the entire course. And there's a check in it if it's done. So obviously this course is complete. So that's what it's referring to. Now, that's what it does in Evernote. But in here, it does know it's a link. So let's click on it. And it doesn't actually do anything. It's not taking me anywhere, which is very annoying because I'm sure that page would have come in. Let's have a look. There's the index page. And it managed to bring that in, including the checkboxes, including the fact that they were checked. So everything's a greyish colour with a line through it. And I've got a setup checklist as well, but that doesn't go anywhere either. I'm assuming that's in here somewhere. Where's my setup checklist? There's my setup checklist. All the things I need to do on my computer to make it actually work for a demo. So the links look like they're there, but they're not actually clickable. Obviously, it's incredibly easy to set that up. So let's go and get the checklist, and let's go and copy the link. That copies the link to that page. If we then go back to the index, there was the setup checklist. We go to it and just paste. That will now link to where it should do. It's just one step further. So it's brought it in. It's done a really good job with it. But if you want things really precise, then you're going to have to do a little bit of work. But the good news is, once you've got it this far, the things that you can do with it in here that I couldn't do with it where it was. So we've already seen that that's a list view and there is a gallery view. But of course you can add any database view that you would like. So you could have it as a board. So I'll just call it board. And it will choose what it will pivot it by. So it's got Envato, it's got redo, it's got checklist, index and recording notes. You'll notice from that some of them are repeated. So I am frantically looking down here for something that's repeated. So number 7, I saw 7 over there. Where's 7 gone? There, no, that's 17. There's 7, text and filters. But 7, text and filters, is also over here as well. So if it's got more than one tag on it, it will appear in more than one place. Looking for it, it's definitely there. No, that's a redo, isn't it? There it is, text and filters. So the same card will be shown in 2 columns. You can change how it's grouped, but you'll notice here in this example, you can only pivot it by tags. There isn't much in the way of metadata. So if you think about it, we're going to that checklist there. You've got the time created and the time it was updated, but you have only got tags as the other meta. Now, if you wanted to add meta to it, in hindsight, then you can do that, and then you can make any kind of views that make sense to you. So is it worthwhile bothering? Let's have a look at the other views. I don't think a calendar view would do as much good, but you never know, it might. So let's create a calendar. It's going to be interesting trying to find it, actually. That's not a calendar view, is it? Let me go and choose calendar. No, it's calendar. But of course, for that to make any sense, I would have to go all the way back. Oh, keep going, to 2014. The calendar view is not brilliant, to be honest. It's not. It would be nice if there was a week view. It was May. There we go. It will show you what you worked on, what you created, and when you created it. You know what's really sad? You see all this work on the 19th of May. Look at the times. 2:30 in the morning. It was my birthday on the 19th of May. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now, what can I say? I was getting a course out the door. It's not useless, I suppose, particularly if you're spreading the development of a course across a month, say, or 2 months, which I tend to do. But the calendar view itself, I think, is the problem here. It needs to be a little bit sturdier. However, if you look at that, there's no way you'd be getting anything like that in Evernote. So bringing your stuff into Notion will give you a lot of options when it comes to viewing your data. So at this point, we've got 4 views already. Which one's missing? We've got a gallery, haven't we? Have we got a table? We don't have a table. That's what we need, a table. And that's the last one. Now, the only difference between that and the list is it's more structured. It looks more like a spreadsheet. Now, if you don't want some of this data, so say when it was created doesn't interest you, you don't need to delete it. You can just hide it in the individual view and then work with that as you will. So at the moment, this is in any kind of order looking at it. And you can, of course, manually manipulate it. So you can move these things around manually so it goes up to the top, and then you would have to then put the rest in order. Obviously, it makes sense for the index to be at the top. The other way to do the sorting is to actually sort it. So sort by name ascending. That will give you each individual video of mine, each individual redo, and then all of the other admin-y stuff would be at the bottom of that. So is it really worth it? I think, depending on the data, it probably is. Now, if it's just your notes, it's going to depend what sense it makes with the notes that you bring in being in a single table. Just a few tips in terms of bringing it in. If you are going to bring any information in from Evernote into Notion, do a lot of the triage at the Evernote end before you start. Make sure it's all tagged the way you want it to be tagged. It'll make it easier when it comes in. And the other thing is make sure that you've got the right notes in the right notebook. That will make a huge difference as well. But the good news is, yes, it will bring it in, which is fantastic. And the even better news is once you've got it into Notion, you can do all the things that you've become accustomed to using in Notion. You can apply those tactics, techniques, methodologies to stuff from however long ago it is. In my case, 5.5 years. One more thing. As soon as you have imported anything from Evernote, it could be one note with one word in it. If there's a notebook with one note that's got one word in it, you get $5 to spend with Notion. So when you go into your settings, you will see there are various things that you can do to generate funds. And one of them is hook Notion up to Evernote. And once you've done that, you get £5 credit or $5 credit, and you can then apply that to future bills from Notion. It's a one-off. It's not every time you do it, but it's always worth it. Every little helps, doesn't it? So that was Notion and Evernote and their love story. Can't say fairer than that, can you? It is actually quite impressive what it can do. I did take some stuff from Evernote once and tried it in OneNote, and that didn't end so well, to be honest. The thing is with all of these applications, I think users think it should be easier to get stuff from one to another. And as you can see, that did pretty well. But you'll never get full fidelity. So I lost all the colours, which meant something in Evernote. They weren't just randomly coloured, it meant something. To get that back, I'd have quite a bit of work if I wanted to bother going through this again. The good news is you can tend to get some data from A to B, but you will always lose something along the way. Whether it's worth it or not is going to depend on when it lands in its final destination, which for me is Notion. Does it add anything to it? I think it potentially could. So if I wanted to redo that course, that gives me a very healthy starting point. But I can see that for me, I'd treat it as though it's a framework, and I wouldn't particularly be concerned about the stuff that's inside the note. If it worked, great. If it didn't, fine. But, I can tell by looking at this that these aren't even individual lines, because at the top of them, it's one big block of text, which, not great. Not great. But what you can do is this, which is move to the end of the line, delete, and enter. Move to the end of the line, delete, enter. Can you imagine how long this would take? And that's the problem. But it can come in. For me, it's enough because I'm happy with the framework. To create that framework would take me a good sort of 20 minutes. So bringing a framework in is enough for me. Is it enough for you? Let me know in the chat. Is the framework what's important? Is it the content of the notes that's important? Is it the fidelity of the actual note? Is it the tags? Let me know. Let me know. I'm sure we'll revisit this again in the future. But for now, you've seen what it can do. So let's move on. Yes, it's unboxing time. Now, before you get excited, you may recall we went away. We'll never forget it. It was a terrible, terrible idea. The holiday itself, per se, wasn't a terrible idea, but when we got there and the internet was running at sort of pre-1970s speed, it was a terrible idea. But while we were there, we had done an unboxing. It never saw the light of day. This was because, did we mention the internet was bad? Anyway, we've dug it out. So it's a sort of blast from the past one. It's a couple of months ago. But you'll see it looks slightly different than normal, but don't let that put you off. And yet again, I've been buying things. Mike got quite attached to it. Have a watch. Finally, we get round to the unboxing. There's 3 of them. They arrived before we left, so let's investigate. We've seen these before, but there's an extra one in the last one. So they're in separate packages because Mike can't remember.
Because that gives us the 2-in-1 chance that Amazon will deliver it.
Yes, there is that about it. You're not wrong. No, the reason they're in 2 boxes, the real reason, although I do like your reason, come on, is you can only order one of these. When they come on offer, I buy them when they're on offer, and when they come on offer, you can only have one. So I have one sent to me and one sent to mine.
Oh, so one's mine.
Sort of. So yes, it's another SSD. Now the handy thing with this is, as you can see from the decor, we're away. So it was a good way to be able to back up while we were away. But of course, there's potentially something missing there.
A computer.
No, the computer's over here. No, so let's open the second one. They're going to be thrilled when we leave them all this packaging, aren't they? At the hotel. Think of it as revenge for the lack of internet. Come on. Right, let's get the second one out. Whee! So we've got 2 of those. So Related to these, what could possibly be in here?
A computer.
No, look
A
at the
cable.
size of it. No, it's quite heavy actually. Yeah. Do you give up?
I give up.
There'll be people
hard
screaming out now.
What do you call it? The
Go
thing
on.
that you put the SSD in. Cradle.
A case.
A case. Close.
Sort of. How about six of them?
cases.
I do actually have a lot of hard drives that need cases. So I thought, right, never mind, let's just order enough to get them in. So these ones are Orico, which are a make that I do like. They're not the same as the last ones I had, because these came from Amazon and the other ones came from 7 Day Shop. And I went to 7 Day Shop to buy some more. Guess what?
Out of stock.
Out of stock. So I ended up with these. So hopefully they're just as good. We'll find out, won't we? We'll find out. So, yep, USB 3, blah, blah, blah. Instructions, sticky pads. Remember the sticky pads go inside, hold the drive down. And a cable. I did remember to bring one of these though, actually. But now I've got one in here, so excellent. So I'll be able to back up as I go on the road is the plan. But to be honest, they're mainly bought to do stuff back at home. But they arrived and we thought, you know what, we'll take them with us and we'll have a play while we're away. She's just as well, because we're not doing anything online, are we? I've just turned the Wi-Fi off again and gone back on 4G. But the thing is, we've discovered what the problem is, didn't we?
Too many people.
Well, yes, it's better at night, I'll grant you. But no, the real problem, we'll have to try and take a photo of it, but I don't rate our chances.
Oh, the
Yes, the roof.
Slate roof.
The roof is actually lead.
Right.
Yes. Now, my mother had lead put on ours. Lead flashing, it's called. And the idea was it's the best stuff to stop leaks. It lasts for ages, which is fine. But the roof here is absolutely covered in it. So no wonder no one's got a signal. It's like a Faraday cage the second you walk into it. So there is my lovely, lovely Sunbow hard drive, which I'm about to put in here. So let's see how this is. Do you know, it's identical. It's metal on the front. And you've got the connector on the back. There's no on-off switch, not needed. Then you've got that to slide out. It's identical to the one that I got from 7 Day Shop. So I shall just pop the hard drive in. Simple job, she said, and then promptly it failed. Right, let's get it into the right angle. There we go, it's in. And then work out which of these would be best to put inside it. Big one, I guess, if you can take it. Will it take it? I'm not sticking it in till I see if it can. If the big one can take it, I'll put the big one in. But at the moment, nothing's taking it. Let's get it keyed up to get it back in. Are you going to travel nicely over there? It's tight. Mind you, it's supposed to be tight, isn't it? Let's just see if it will go in. And if it will, I'll stick it in later. Yeah, I think it will. Great, one hard drive ready to be initialised. Right, I'll put the other one in later, but there's one done anyway. So I'll get that on my MacBook Air, which is with us. In fact, both of them are. And let's set that up. And a spare. I always keep these. I bet you don't, do you?
No.
No, thought not.
I never buy.
You don't actually. You leave that to me. I sort all of that out. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, but I sort the food shopping out.
You do actually,
Yeah.
and you've actually just brought me a carrot cake, so I'm rather happy. That's for tea later, isn't it? So that's what we've been up to while we're away. And like I say, I will configure that one later and take the other 4 cases home. But yes, that's not bad. This was quite inexpensive. It was about £6. I think the other one was £6.99. And I do like Orico. I've had them before, and they work well. So here I am on a holiday with all my drives lined up and all my drive cases lined up with them. Can't say fairer than that when you're on holiday, can you? See, the tech's just as sexy when we're away as it is when we're at home.
Yes.
Anyway, that's our unboxing, and hopefully by the time you see this, we'll be back. With some internet. Please give me some internet. He's just smirking at me, it's not fair. Okay, bye-bye.
See you next time. Right.
And with that, we'll be back next week. Episode 65, 28th of February 2020, 9 PM UK time. If you would like to give us any suggestions that you have things you would like to see us cover, then get in touch. Just let us know. In the meanwhile, you can watch on demand. Just to give you a swift reminder that 51, which, if you recall, YouTube got giddy with itself, and although the live broadcast was absolutely perfect, they managed to move the audio and video off by a minute, which made it a bit tricky to follow. But I've re-edited it and uploaded it, and it was an important one. It was an important one because we covered Notion for newbies. Quite a long session, as I recall, introducing all things Notion. So it's a good one to watch for that. Also, of course, Excel macros and Blog 30 and Divi. So plenty to watch in that one. We love you guys, and if you love us, can you give us a thumbs up down there? It makes all the difference. Now, if you want more information about all the things that I do, which includes After Hours, then make sure you head off to elainegiles.com/VIP and sign up for the VIP newsletter. Now, we have another newsletter, which is different because it's all things MacBites. So on my list, I don't talk about the podcast. On the MacBites list, we do talk about the podcast. So if you want the full range, head off to both. And also, in the meanwhile, between shows, we're available in Slack. Yes, we have our own Slack chat. It works on mobile, it works on the desktop. If you've never tried Slack before, it couldn't be easier. Just go to macbites.co.uk/Slack, and it's where we carry on the conversation. And we do have an absolute ball while we're doing that. There's lots and lots of posts all week about the podcast, about the show, suggestions for the show, queries that people have, loads and loads of stuff. But the commonality between it all is we have a fantastic time. So do join us. That is macbites.co.uk/Slack. Now, if you want to contact us directly, you'll find us at macbites.co.uk, macbites.co.uk/Slack, as I've just mentioned. You can email us at thecrew@macbites.co.uk. We're also all on Twitter, so there's MacBites on Twitter, there's me on Twitter, Elaine Giles. Mike is Thomas Mike on Twitter, and of course there's MacBites Siri. Who doesn't want to share what MacBites Siri's got to say? But with that, as I've said, we will be back next week, virtually the same time, same place. So let's head off back there. It is the 28th of February and it's 9 p.m. Now, we do usually share what we're eating. And at the moment, we're probably not eating. We're probably dashing back. It's going to be a chaotic weekend. It's already been a chaotic week. But whatever happens, we will be back with you next week when we will be able to share in real time what nibbles we've got, what treats we've got. But if you'd like to share with me in the chat right now, that would be fantastic. So get in there what you've been nibbling while you've been watching the show, although that could be dangerous, couldn't it? But do it anyway. And we'll both see you next week. So it's good night from me, it's good night from Mike. And as I've said, we'll both see you next time.